My name's Areej Syed. And just like all of you sitting here today, I, as a student, often feel helpless about how I can contribute to my environment and the community. But before everything, I'd want to ask you a quick question. Do you like my shoes, or do I need to go to the store and buy a new pair? Well, thank you. But do you notice how we're all constantly bound up in this cycle where we're seeking, we want a sense of comfort from people's, we constantly seek a validation from those that are around us. And we've reached this point where all our needs have been met, and now our wants become endless. How many of us have spent hours scrolling on TikTok when we come across our favorite celebrity in their new high tops or bomber jacket? It usually doesn't take us long before we hop onto the bandwagon and indulge in trendy fashion wear. Before you know it, you have a closet that is full of random clothing that you don't even remember existed. This is because it's already out of fashion. And unfortunately, I'd have to plead myself guilty. Now, we, sitting at a point of privilege, commonly don't realize that our actions, as simple as pressing the purchase button, can have such a huge consequence on those living in lower economically developed nations. For instance, we have one major weapon that we are using against people in these societies, and this is known as fast fashion. And no, I don't mean you'll be able to run faster in your new Nike Jordans, but I'm rather talking about the business model that was created to accommodate to our desire to achieve clothing as cheaply and quickly as possible. Now, this right here is a rack you'd see at any retail store. What we don't realize is this is what's usually behind it. Our wants are creating degradation between lands and societies, where we're only increasing the inequality gap and reducing the amount of equity based solely on differences on income and geographical location. Let's take Bangladesh, for instance. It's a nation that has suffered the repercussions of fast fashion for a very long period of time, having not only social costs but environmental costs. We have air pollution, the textile industry. The excessive amount of production has led to not only a vast amount of fumes being left into the air, but there's also increased soil degradation. The amount of pesticides and fertilizers being used to create the fibers that create the clothes that we are wearing today are leading to degradation of people's lives in these societies. There's also persisting social injustice. Now, there are a lack of labor rights and continuous health risks that these people are exposed to. Respiratory issues, skin diseases, cancers, and this is all at the hands of our affluent, westernized societies. Now, let's be honest. We've all fell victim to these capitalistic schemes. But what do we do once we've worn an outfit once to a party? It'll probably never be seen again. And why is that? There are constant social pressures on us to vary our clothing, where we're supposed to wear something different whenever we go outside or we'll be looked down upon. And what does that lead to? Waste. There was a recent study that was conducted in the United States that showed that 85% of the clothing consumed ends up in landfill sites. What was found out further was that this doesn't only end up in American landfill sites, but is sold off to lower economically developed nations. Over here, the mass is so substantial that it not only overfills their landfill sites, but ends up in their oceans. We're not only strengthening the amount of solid waste on our planet, but we're increasing the amount of environmental inequality between nations, where people who aren't even the direct consumers of these goods and services need to face the greatest consequences of our actions. Let's go back to the origin of waste. We've discussed the drawbacks of fast fashion, but why does it still persist? It's the money-hungry markets, the profitability of these goods, and this leads to it persisting. We as individuals are becoming more conscious. We want to purchase goods and services that are sustainable. However, there's something that we need to be wary of, which is known as greenwashing. Firms want to market themselves as green, but their practices are not always aligned with this. I'm pretty sure we've all come across these labels before. all sustainable, care for the earth. But how do we know that these are actually being followed within their practices? The reality of it is that we don't. TerraChoice, an environmental company, has categorized greenwashing with 7 sins. It includes the sin of fibbing, the sin of hidden trade-off, the sin of no proof, and these are commonly committed during promotions, which we become fools of. A further strategy used by businesses is competitive altruism. And this relies on creating an altruistic pro-environmental image. But altruism requires a lot of self-sacrifice and is commonly very expensive, which leads to further greenwashing. We get enticed by these labels. We believe that we're obtaining goods that are sustainably sourced. But at the end of the day, we're just in the shadows of the hidden trade-offs of these goods. Now, it's very easy to be able to fall into the cycle of perpetual consumption when you're living in such a fast-paced society, such as the United Arab Emirates. You're consistently being bombarded and barraged with advertisements and commercials to keep up with the fastest trends or newest technologies. However, we need to work towards adopting a minimalistic lifestyle. We need to be more conscious with our consumption. Being attentive and mindful about your purchases and their usage, being aware of their effects on our well-being, the environment, our finances, is what is known as mindful consumerism. We need to focus on our ideals and needs rather than selling into impulse buys or the fast-paced trends. Similarly, minimalism can allow us to declutter. It can allow us to streamline our lives, focus on what's most important, and put aside anything that does not add value. This will not only help reduce the negative impact of our consumption, but it rather allows us to be able to de-stress, to be able to give value to the things that we already have. Now, here are a few tips you should look into before you go into any purchases any further. Give yourselves a buffer zone before you purchase anything. Usually, when we're down to the wire, we recklessly abandon any attempts to be able to make an intentional purchase. Give yourself time to research. Know the consequences of your actions and make the best option out of your exhausted alternatives. Similarly, as we've already seen before, greenwashing exists, and you cannot necessarily rely on all these labels. Look for certifications by reputable agencies. This can help provide us confidence that certain regulations are being followed to be able to address social and environmental concerns. Now, we've discussed all of this, and we know all the drawbacks, but one main thing is required to be able to help create change, to be able to help create an environmentally conscious world, and that is changing human attitudes towards consumption and waste. It is very important for us to get rid of this throwaway culture which allows things such as fast fashion to exist. Clothes, materials have value, and this needs to be reignited in individuals. Why not follow the queen of sophisticated minimalism, Kate Middleton? Next time you go outside, why not wear the same outfit? The way you style it can make all the difference. It has already been proven that even if sustainable processes are implemented, over-purchasing will still lead to persisting problems. So I hope you could get something out of this today, and remember that sometimes less can be more. Thank you.